Welcome. I'm Vince Waldron. I'm the instructor for the course that you've registered for this semester, Communication and Work Relationships, or maybe a similar title. I'm also one of the three authors for the textbook that we'll be using this semester. I've spent many years teaching about the kinds of communication that we find to be tricky or even risky, sometimes in our families, like when we have a conflict with our family members, right? But often at work. In fact, there are many situations that we encounter at work that feel risky, high stakes, like we could lose something if we don't approach them the right way. But fortunately, these situations are also high stakes in the sense that they could create lots of good value for us, for the people that we work with, and for our team. Your ability to communicate in these situations could be really good for your career and your relationships with people who matter to you at work. We're going to consider risk as the core of what we're studying this semester, and we're going to pair that with communication. Communication, the tools that we can use to transform risky situations. As we do that, we're going to apply a four-step model. First, in every single chapter, we'll ask you to consider a specific kind of communication and attend or notice the cues that this kind of communication is in place in your workplace. And to think about, is it risky or not? Second, sense making. This is the kind of communication where we interact with others. It could be a valued peer. It could be somebody you trust, a mentor. It could be people at home, right? Where you talk about what's happening at work and you make sense of it in terms of your career goals, your values, what it is that your company needs and wants, and even think about it in terms of the larger community that you work in. Sense making is interpreting the cues. Third is transforming. In every chapter in our book, we'll give you very specific ideas for the kinds of communication that you can use and that other people have used in these situations, and will help you think through what are the consequences of trying to approach this in different ways. Fourth is maintaining. Maintaining means creating stability, the practices at your work, in your relationships, in your teams, if you're a supervisor, in the groups that you manage. Creating stability in those practices, creating procedures and ways of talking that make work feel less risky on a day-to-day basis. So we have attending, sense making, transforming, and maintaining. Each of the chapters will unfold in a specific way. It'll start with a discussion of this kind of communication. What kinds of communication counts as bullying, for instance? Or what kinds of communication do we use when we're giving people new ideas to think about? What kinds of communication counts as negative feedback, right? Or bad news at work? Well, think about in that section why this kind of communication is so important. Why is it risky? But also, why does it make a difference in terms of your career or the success of your organization? So that's the first part of the chapter. Second, turns out that just about every kind of communications that's risky or tricky at work has been researched closely. We're going to draw on lots of practical experience, but then we're also going to look at some of that most recent research on these kinds of communication. And then we'll also look at some classic studies of, for instance, giving feedback at work. From this research, we're going to draw some very specific conclusions about what works and what doesn't when it comes to managing risk. Third, each chapter will take a very practical turn by offering you a list, a summary of the kinds of communication tactics and approaches that have been studied. It'll give you some specific communication options to try out. Some of these may seem familiar, others you may need to practice before you can use them at work. Finally, each chapter takes an even more practical turn by providing case studies, questions for you to think about. It's designed to help you take these ideas, these theories, this research, and apply it to your own life, to your own career, to your own work. Throughout the class and each unit, you'll have a lecture like this where I don't try to just summarize what's in the chapter, but I'll try to pull out what I think are the most interesting themes to be thinking about at your work. Second, you'll have some slides or notes to go with the lecture. We may even have an AI summary for you. I can assure you that I've looked at the AI summaries and they just leave out a lot of interesting things that maybe matter most to us at work. AI is a great tool, but it's still developing. In almost every unit, you'll be asked to apply what you're learning by writing or doing a thought exercise, an application exercise, and each unit will also likely have a quiz. We'll have several larger papers where you tie together what you've been learning in the chapters to create your own kind of philosophy of communication, your own ideas about how you want to manage risk in your workplace and in your career. I think you're going to enjoy the course, and I'm really glad that you're with us this semester.